So nowadays, a lot of us work remotely, whether that be a fully remote team or hybrid with some in the office and some remote, or maybe just different teams working together from different offices. From what I've seen though, developers more often than not just rely on taking turns screen sharing in video calls. But what if there's a better, more collaborative way? That's where JetBrains Code With Me comes in. If you've heard of Visual Studio Live Share, basically it's the same kind of thing, but for JetBrains IDEs. In this video, we'll look at the features of Code With Me, and I'll demo it so you can see what it looks like. So this is their webpage talking about it, and it's worth pointing out that it's been around for a few years for some of the other IDs, but it's only very recently been supported in Rider, and it's still in beta. In fact, on their webpage, it's not even listed here. If we scroll down further, it's got the subscription options. So there's Premium, Enterprise, and there's also the Community, which is for non-commercial development, and this does mention Rider. And for this, it has limitations, so the session length is up to 30 minutes, and it supports up to 3 guests per session. So as I mentioned before, with other licensing, this might change over time, so always just check back here to find out what the current licensing model is. If we scroll down further, there's a list of the various functionality. We'll demo a lot of this, and then there's security, which we'll talk about in a sec, and then there's the FAQs. So I just wanted to show a few things here. So how is code licensed? So it's licensed per user, and this is about the host user. As it mentions here, guest users do not need a Code With Me license. So the licensing is around the host user. Looking at the how can we use it free of charge, it does mention about the community plan, but it also mentions a few other scenarios, for example, education license holders. It also mentions these active paid subscriptions. It doesn't mention Rider because Rider's in beta, as I mentioned before. So do come back and check this. So I'm assuming Rider will be added here once it's out of beta. And at the time of recording, I would say it definitely is beta because there's a few different scenarios where I've seen it crash, but it does work, and we'll see that very shortly. Before we jump over to Rider to demo this, I just want to show this security page because obviously that's going to be of concern to a lot of people how this works. So this page details the architecture. We will see this happening when we demo, but basically the host starts a session, the lobby server returns a link, and the host can share it with the person they want to pair program with, typically via Teams or Zoom or whatever communication tool that team uses. So they'll send that URL, that link, to the guest. The guest can then click on it, and that'll launch a thin client where the guest can collaborate on this coding session. And we'll see that very shortly anyway. I'm going to skip over this because we will be demoing this. As far as encryption is concerned, it's end-to-end TLS encrypted. And it does point out that because it's end-to-end TLS encrypted, that even when it goes through JetBrains relay servers, no third party, including JetBrains, can access the channel. I won't go fully into this, but it does talk about how it uses asymmetric encryption to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. So from the host point of view, the host has the private certificate, which never leaves the host computer. From a guest point of view, someone impersonating a guest, when the guest joins, they'll see a 4-digit code, and the host will also see that. So if you're in like a video call, the guest can read out the code and the host can just verify that it's the same code before they click approve. And we'll see this happening in a sec. So let's jump over to Rider. So we've already seen this code in the performance module, and we've seen there's an inefficient implementation of Fibonacci. In fact, thanks to the tracing profiling, we saw really how inefficient this was, where even where n was 45 we used, it was calling calculate millions of times within just 45 calls. So in this scenario, I want to call on a colleague to help me out with making this a bit more performed. So first of all, I need to make sure I've got Code With Me enabled. Now, we've spoken about plugins before. So if I go to plugins and type Code With Me, then this is a bundle plugin. So you should already have it installed, but it's probably not enabled. If you shift and do Code With Me, you'll see this enable Code With Me beta. When you enable it, it'll ask you to restart. So once that's enabled, we've got this button up here at the top, Code With Me. If I click on this, we can start a session by clicking this button. We have a few different options. We can choose read-only, edit files, full access, or custom. And custom allows you to configure it with these different options. I'm going to choose full access for this, but, and I'll show you why in a sec, I would strongly recommend you never ever use this. So let's start the session. And now it tells me who's in the session, so it's just me at the moment. I've got an option to copy a link, so if I click on that, And then to simulate another user, I've actually got a VM, which is over here. So this is just a VM on my own machine. If I paste that URL into here and then press enter. So in a real world scenario, I would have probably sent this link to a colleague via a Teams message or something, and they would have gone to it and it would have opened this page. They can click join session. And note that it mentions about having the JetBrains Toolbox app installed that we spoke about earlier on in the course when we were talking about installing Rider. We've already got it installed, so I'm going to say join session. It's asking if I want to open JetBrains Toolbox, so yes. And this has now popped up this. And this is the security code I mentioned before. So it's 0700. Looking back at the host machine, we can see we've got this pop up. And the number matches, so I'm going to accept. And the guest has now joined the session. And as we can see, the guest can see the same code. And if we look at the host machine, we can see an icon there, so we can see where the guest is. And the same on the guest machine, we can see where the host is. The guest now has these icons up here, and the host also has these icons up here, and we can start a call. So if I click on join a call, then the guest sees a call is started, so the guest can join that call. And by default, it's muted. You can start a screen sharing session. You can enable your camera. If you do show call in window, you can see the other person. And from here, you can share your screen from there. You can open a chat. So you've got a chat window. You can even start a poll as well. So if I exit this call now, and then go to the host machine and also leave this call. Other things we've got is I can click on a user, so I can say follow. And when I've done this, this red box going around shows the pane that the other person has got. So as a guest, if I switch over to program, because the host is following, then it also jumped over to program. If the guest selects the Solution Explorer window, then the host can see that that's what the guest has selected. And you can see down here it says following user. If the guest opens a terminal, I don't think I've actually shown the integrated terminal yet, but if you do this pane, you've got Control, Alt, and 1. So you can open this up. And if we look at the host, you can see that because the host is following the guest, we've got this red box going around. So as a guest, if I start typing, then you can see that the host can see what the guest is typing. So now I can demo why I said never use full access mode. Because even if you trust the other person, maybe they're a colleague, they can still access all your files. So for example, if I do users dan.kube and ls, then as a guest connecting to the host machine, I can actually do cat and log out my config file, which has all my security keys to allow me to access all my Kubernetes clusters, for example. And this is just one example, but the fact that you can browse the hard drive of the other person makes this, in my opinion, quite a security risk. I would prefer to see them only being able to browse the files in the directory of the project you're sharing, but it does look like it gives you full access to the whole hard drive. If I stop following, you can also right click and say pair coding mode. If I click on that, then that is doing a two-way follow. So it's basically what we described before, but as well as following the other person, it also starts them following you as well. So let's actually have a look at improving this Fibonacci calculator. I did add some unit tests. So if I go to the unit tests, and note that the guest has followed me to this point because we're in pair programming mode, so we're following each other. I haven't actually given these very good names, so let's fix that. Let's just copy this and do, remember, Control RR. Let's paste that in and tests. And then let's just get rid of the one, that'll do. Naming things is hard, so that'll do. So if we run that now and do run, then as a host, I can see that this is passed. It does say that the guest can't see this tool window. It's only available for the hosts. If we go over to the guest one, and then let's just close this terminal, then whilst the guest can't see the test window, it can see the status here. So for example, let's just change one of these to something else. The guest can't open that test pane, but they can do this and do like run all. This pane pops up, but it doesn't show the tests, but it does show up here that it's gone red. So this might be the kind of thing they improve in the future, but at the moment it's quite a limited visibility of the tests. If I change that back to 1 and then run that again, that's now green. And if we look back on the host machine, then we can see that's green as well, if I close that as well. So let's actually make this now performant. So if I go back to Fibonacci calculator, so I'm going to say over my Teams call or whatever chat we're using to the guest, can you please write me a more efficient implementation? And if I show these two windows side by side so you can see how responsive it is, remember that the guest is on a VM on this machine and the host is on my main machine. So to do it without recursion, we kind of probably want some kind of loop, and I probably want to store a previous next. So let's just say prev. And even here I'm getting the AI autocompletion, but let's ignore that. That's not what I want. It's probably going to be new. Because of Fibonacci, I'm going to start with those. Because remember that the Fibonacci sequence is summing up the last two, so we need something to start with. I'm now going to do a for loop, so let's say for. So even things like those templates that I've shown earlier on in the course are still working as a guest. So we kind of want current being the sum of the previous two. Then we want to shift it down, I guess, which that's actually done what I want. AI is doing exactly what I wanted there, to be honest. So basically, to talk through this, this is taking the previous two, which the first iteration is this. So actually, we want to start on this one because we want to start on two because we've already got the first two here. And then actually, I need to return current. So let's do that. Then return current. I am noticing that as a guest, it does seem to be jumping around a bit more. It's not as smooth an experience as if I was just coding normally in an IDE. So I think I can ditch this now. I probably actually do need to handle the scenario where that is 0, and then it needs to return 0. But other than that, I think we are good. So let's go back to the host, because remember that the guest can't see this window. And let's run them all to make sure it still passes. And we've got something failing. So 1, 2 worked. So I think that this is because this needs to be greater than or equal to. So let's try that again. And that's now passed. So this new implementation is obviously going to be much more efficient than the recursive call. I'm sure there's much more efficient implementations than this, but we've certainly made a big step forward as far as performance is concerned. The last thing I want to show is port forwarding. So there's a pin saying code with me. And again, it might be hidden away under this ... And I can click plus and add a port that I want to forward. So for this example, if I just open up a terminal and let's just spin up a Docker container, let's give it port 1234 and port 80, and let's just do Nginx. So that's just a super simple website. And that's listening on 1234 like we saw. So if I go to the guest machine and open up the browser and go to localhost 134, then it's not going to be able to access it because I've not port forwarded it. If I go to the host machine and click on plus, do 1234, enter, as soon as I did that, the guest was able to access that Nginx page via that port forward. So that's really useful. Imagine we're pair programming on creating a website or an API, and I'm running it locally on my machine. Then I can port forward whatever port it is so that the guest can also access the page to test the website that you're building. And then once that's done, you can click the minus button to stop that port forward. One other thing to mention is that we can see the other user is just called user here. If we go over to the guest machine and go back to Rider, if you click on this code with me and go to the settings here and then settings, then you can set your username here in the settings. So as you can see, this is a really powerful tool for pair programming. As I mentioned, this is in beta for Rider. So there are little things like I did find that when I was in a call, if I then try to change the access mode whilst in a call, then the whole IDE crashes. So I've got to kill the process. So there are a few little things like that, but it's fair enough because it is in beta. So when it comes out of beta, hopefully it'll be a lot more stable. But this is certainly something I'm going to be using a lot moving forward when doing pair programming.